Thanks for joining us. This is our extended interview with Megan Zavieh of Zavieh Law. She's a California State Bar defense attorney who helps lawyers with ethics issues they run into. The first part of this video is from our GNGF Live. That happens every other Wednesday. The second part here is the bonus extended interview where I'm going to dive into how Megan runs a successful law practice and has time for family and her hobbies, and then we'll dive into some of the tools she uses to help her do that. If you already saw the live, I'll put a timestamp to the exclusive extended interview below. Be sure to like and subscribe to follow along with our great conversations on legal marketing and the business side of running a law firm. And to watch this video on the platform of your choice, you can find everywhere we stream at gngf.tv. Welcome to GNGF Live, your bi-weekly Ask the Experts about all things law firm marketing and business growth. I'm Mark Homer, author of Online Law Practice Strategies and founder of Get Noticed, Get Found. Since we focus a lot around marketing your law firm on GNGF Live, I'm excited to have today's guest, Megan Zavieh of Zavieh Law. She focuses on helping defend lawyers that run into ethics issues. As always, be sure to like and subscribe our page, not just the video, so you can get updated when our next episode goes live. Of course, it never hurts for you to show a little love and like the video too. We've got moderators in the chat, so please ask any questions and interact while we're live. If you're watching this in the future, after we're live, we do monitor the comments on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and we'll work to reach out to our guests and answer any follow-up questions you have. And that's because we love you, and we love getting to meet you in person. So come see us. Here's where we're going to be next. So first up, on February 26th to 28th, Josh and I will be at the ABA Tech Show in Chicago, so we'll be wandering around there, so look for us. On March 16th through 18th, I'll be back in Atlanta, where I was just a couple weeks ago, helping lawyers design their practice from the ground up at Lawyerist LabCon. March 25th through 27th, I'll be in Denver, Colorado with Josh again with Legal Marketing Association's annual event. April 1st through 3rd, backed by popular demand, GNGF is joining 4 other legal marketing agencies in Las Vegas to put on the Best Damn Legal Marketing Conference, or Bedlam 2020. Wow, Joe, that was such a great conference last year. We got tons of great feedback. It's awesome. I'm so excited to be doing this one again. If you're interested, reach out to us. Joe can, you drop Josh's email in the chat. He can get you a discount for, I think, about $200 off. In May 7th and 8th, I'll be on the road again in New Orleans, where we're speaking in an advanced digital marketing tactics breakout at the Small Firm Bootcamp. And we can get that link in there too, because that'll be a great one for people to check out. Whew, that's just the next couple of months and doesn't include a few webinars we'll be on and a half dozen awesome guests we're going to have lined up for these Facebook Lives. If you aren't following our page, you may not have noticed, but we started a new video series at the end of last year we call GNGF Tips. So check it out on our YouTube page or on Facebook. Joe, you should throw a couple links to the videos, some of the tip videos we have. I think Chris had one on video on voice search, and you find a couple good ones. So check them out. We drop a new GNGF Tips video every other Friday. All right, I'm excited for this one. So let's get to the interview. Megan Zavieh, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so I didn't really get into this much. I kind of mentioned it in the beginning. So Megan is a ethics attorney, essentially, in California. So what got you interested in ethics work?
Well, that's a good question. And hopefully I can condense it into a short story. I always was interested in helping other lawyers. Even before I went to law school, I had planned to become a psychiatrist for lawyers. And so I even went to law school intending to then go to medical school and then treat lawyers. I guess I thought it was better than just going straight to medical school. Also, I wasn't prepared for medical school yet. So anyway, that was my original plan. And I went very far afield from that. Never did go to med school, went into practicing law, but eventually realized that there was a place for lawyers to help other lawyers with attorney discipline issues, because a lot of them, especially as I was starting, the ones I was helping were ones suffering from depression primarily. And so it was kind of, instead of being their psychiatrist, I was their lawyer, but going through a lot of those same issues. And once I did a little bit of the work, I just loved it and I never looked back.
So what did you do before all the, you really targeted down and focused on kind of just helping people with ethics issues?
So I spent about 10 years as a big law associate, primarily securities litigation. Started out general litigation, some real estate work, anti-money laundering. I had just started as an associate when September 11th hit. And so I worked with an anti-money laundering partner on Sarbanes-Oxley. She represented a lot of investment banks who were lobbying for changes. So literally every night we were comparing versions of the bill, creating new white papers, arguing with our clients about what positions to take because she represented big industry groups of banks. So that was really fascinating. And then
It was a
that
crazy
segued.
time.
Oh, it
A
was
crazy time.
insane. It was insane. And I had no clue. I had just come off a 2-year federal clerkship where you went home at 5 o'clock every day. And, I walk into a big firm. I think I started September 3rd or 4th. And then September 11th hits.
Oh,
And
like days.
yeah, literally. And then now I'm, late at night working with this woman who's a legend in anti-money laundering, but I have no idea, right? This is all so new to me. I don't know that she's big. I don't know the work we're doing is important. I gathered it was important, but, it took a while for me to even get my bearings. And here we were, knee deep in this bill. So that was crazy, crazy times. And then it segued into securities litigation. And that's mostly what I did for my time as an associate with securities litigation.
So securities litigation, what dropped you over into, what was like the first few dabbles into just focusing on ethics?
So first was someone close to me who needed help with the state bar in a discipline matter. And as an associate in big law, basically if somebody's not a client of the firm, you're supposed to act like you don't know anything and can't help anybody. That drove me insane. And the number of phone calls from friends, like, well, I think this is your answer, but I'm not actually allowed to give you legal advice. I felt so lame telling my friends that. And this was someone that I couldn't say that to. And so I worked sort of in the shadows on a couple discipline cases. And I went, wow, this is actually really interesting. And it actually matters to an individual, where the securities litigation, it just didn't have that same personal importance.
Right.
Saving a multi-billionaire a couple $1 million didn't really, fulfill the soul in the same way. So that's kind of how I started dabbling in it. And then after I had my first child, I went on to a different track in my firm, no longer being on partnership track. And that was as the economy was tanking. See, I started law firms in September when I end up in the Great Recession, trying to switch jobs. And so then I ended up just leaving big law altogether. And I was like, all right, now what do I do? And I was like, oh, remember how awesome that work was? Let me see if I can maybe help a few more people, but mostly be home. And then helping a few more people grew and grew and grew and became a full practice. And I loved it.
So one of the things I wanted to understand is like, from ethics perspective, and you just kind of went through some of the, these are things that were like, provide like a joy for you, right? I mean, this is something, these are the type of cases that you enjoyed. So what is your general philosophy when working with other lawyers on these type of issues where, a lot of lawyers are working with consumers or clients that in their like worst moments and they're scared and fearful and stuff. This is like when a lawyer is really fearful, right? It's like, when you have ethics issues and we're losing ability to practice law or all kinds of things.
Yeah. So my clients actually are frequently in the client seat for the first time. And the ones who are really self-aware will sometimes say at the end of a representation things like, I can't believe how much I learned about my clients by being a client. It's a real learning curve for some of them, and hopefully educational, and they can take that empathy back with them to their clients. But I really look at it as a partnership, and it's something that I can do with my clients that maybe a lawyer representing lay people who aren't understanding their case the same way, aren't able to do. But we go into it together. I'm like, well, you know your case better than I do because you lived it, but I know a bit more about the process and what's going to turn out to be important. So you got to let me guide some of it, but then feed me the information. And some are more capable of assisting in their own defense than others, depending upon mental health issues. For one, addiction can often come in, but also just the ability to step back and look at their case objectively. Some walk in and are like, I can't see this objectively. Here's my file. Do what you need to do. Ask me any questions, but I know I can't direct it. Others are like, no, I think I get it, but I realize that you know more than I do about this procedure or this court or the players. So then we work almost more as co-counsel. Everybody has their different levels of ability to contribute, but we're more of a team than I think maybe in a different practice area you might feel with your client. And I love that.
Actually, I never thought about that, right? So from the perspective of like you're a lawyer you understand, you can be true empathy for this exact situation.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas somebody who, hasn't been in a horrific accident or lost somebody in, like an accident or, criminal proceedings and stuff, right? Like they haven't actually sat in that seat.
Right.
Whereas you can probably provide a lot more empathy in that, because this is something that would be fearful for any lawyer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally get it. Like somebody's coming after you. An angry client has created this situation with the state bar where now they want to suspend you.
Mm-hmm.
I can relate to that very easily. Not that it's happened to me, but I can get that. Oh, this is what I do every day, and you're talking about not letting me do it every day.
Yeah,
And
that's
also,
interesting.
if they can provide perspective where they'll say, well, isn't this subject to a motion to dismiss, or can't I get this in discovery, where somebody who's not a lawyer might not have those same strategy thoughts.
So you do bring, like, it's the true like team effort then.
Yeah. And I love that aspect of it, because I am a solo, and I used to be in big firms where you'd walk down the hall and have somebody to bounce ideas off of or share your war stories of the day with. And now my clients kind of serve that colleague role a little bit more. I mean, it's not quite the same. You can't just go complain to your clients about your other clients. But at the same time, you can say, well, I have this thought, do you know of some facts in your case that would make this not work? And it can just be a 3-second conversation, as opposed to like, well, this is what a motion for summary judgment would be like,
Right.
like they speak the same language. And so that collaboration is a really nice aspect and makes it less lonely to be a solo.
So we work with a lot of law firms, right? And from business strategy and marketing and stuff. So one of the questions I always like to ask, and so since you have a law firm, I'm just curious, what is the why? Like, what is your why behind, like kind of why you do what you do, what your firm represents?
That's a great question. And I love that, because I think it's one that everyone should ask themselves in law practice, because when you're burned out and you don't have a why, it shows. And then you become my clients. I think the best way to describe it is this. I took my very first full discipline case, like paying client, all the way to trial. And my client was disbarred, which we knew from day one was going to happen. But that was fine. That wasn't really the barometer by which we measured the case. We were able to win some victories along the way. It made a big difference to him. And when the case ended, I got a thank you note from his mother. And his mother didn't speak much English, and she took the time to write it in English and mail it to me. And it touched me that I helped somebody whose mom was so impacted by my work that without ever meeting me or talking to me, she would take the time to send this note, which was a great effort. I knew it was a great effort. And my why is that I actually help my colleagues on a really deep personal level in ways that other people in their lives aren't necessarily able to help them. So they're all in crisis, right? They wouldn't be here with me if there wasn't a crisis going on in their lives. And those crises vary from pretty minor to extreme. That first client, pretty extreme, right? But I can actually touch their lives in a way that I was never able to do with the other type of practice that I was doing.
So you've created this practice, very targeted. You have a why of like why you're helping. You also started a podcast.
I did.
Are you like over a year old now?
Almost 2 years. We're about to hit our 100th episode.
That's great. So why did you start the podcast? Because I mean, you're a pretty busy person. I follow you a little bit on social, right? I kind of understand what's going on there, and like you're a busy person.
I am, but I started the podcast for a couple of reasons. One is just that people aren't talking about legal ethics in the podcast space. I mean, we looked before we bothered to put the effort in, right? Like, is there already something out there? And there wasn't. And I find in speaking to lawyers, because I go around and speak at a lot of conferences and talk a lot to people in the hallways, that the ethics rules scare people. And they scare them into not taking risks, sometimes not doing really good things. And I thought we should illuminate what the ethics rules actually allow you to do, don't allow you to do. Let's talk about the things that scare people. And I just wanted it to be like a part of our everyday conversation instead of like this elephant in the room that everyone blames for their risk aversion. So that's really what got me started on it. And then I kept it going and will continue to keep it going because it's been really rewarding, all the people I get to meet through the podcast. I mean, I've had some amazing guests that, not that I think they would have, shunned me if I tried to walk up in the hallway and shake their hands or something. But I certainly wouldn't have had a 45-minute or an hour-long deep conversation with them. And so that's been wonderful to get to meet people, and I get new ideas, and I learn so much from my guests that I get a lot out of it. And then people tell me that they like the show and they keep listening. So it's a reward in and of itself.
Great. Yeah, I mean, obviously, big fan of the show. I like the point about, like, there's a lot of fear sometimes around the ethics. And I want to get into marketing in 1 second because it's where we live a lot.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, like, just confusion or not understanding, or like the fear of all the things you have to deal with every day with clients, right? Like
Exactly.
there's a true fear there. And sometimes it's, it reduces, I think, innovation or risk taking and stuff in a lot of people who might want to kind of like push the envelope a little bit on things and just try things different, to work with clients a different way or whatever it is. So I think that, like, being break down the understanding there a little bit so that it reduces the fear, and we lead to some, better ways to attack some of the problems for clients. Some of the innovation going on out there. I mean, I love it. I mean, and just in the past almost 2 years now, like, the changes that are starting to happen out in the landscape have been fascinating. So,
Very.
Maybe there's a little bit to just overall education with the podcast there, chipping away at some of that too. I mean,
I'd love to think I had some part in that. I don't know about it, but.
So getting to marketing. So, we deal with marketing, and we know that ethics are, have a place in some of the marketing for law firms, in marketing and law. So what are the top things like a law firm should be concerned now, these days, because we're beyond like Yellow Page and simple websites. What should they be thinking about when it comes to like some of the ethics? Like, what are some things you would see that could get somebody in a little trouble?
Well, there's a couple of things that come to mind immediately. One is actually super simple, and that is that the regulators are often interested when we are advertising in a way that's misleading for immigrant communities and other at-risk communities. They're not generally like launching big discipline investigations on advertising, right? That's one thing I wish people understood. It's like, you're not going to get disbarred because you ran an ad. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, even if you violated.
I always tell people, it's funny because I totally agree. I tell people it's not like they're looking for this, but if you do things really well, or do things kind of in a sneaky way and suddenly do well in your market, the other attorneys in town might point things out though. That's oftentimes, there's usually like somebody called and said, hey, look what they're doing on their website. That's kind of shady.
Right. And what you usually get is a letter that says, hey, quit doing that.
Stop.
And then you quit doing it.
Take it down. And it's good.
Right. It's not like going to lead to disbarment. But they are really concerned if we are misleading those sensitive communities. And so one is like, California has a very clear rule. If you advertise in a foreign language and you're implying that you provide services in a foreign language, then there's certain things you have to do. You have to identify who speaks that language. And if it's not the lawyer, what the person's role is. Because sometimes it's the legal secretary or a paralegal and not the attorney who speaks the foreign language, which is fine. But just like, make sure you're following rules, like when you're targeting those more vulnerable communities.
Yeah.
Pretty simple. But that's one. Another is to read the actual advertising rules in your state when you're going out to put anything new out. So whether it's that you're going to start getting active on social media, or you're actually publishing an ad, a written print ad somewhere, or putting out a new website, just go read the rules, because a lot of lawyers think they say things they don't, or don't realize there's some very specific and easy to follow steps. So that's another big one. And then the other is not to be afraid to put ads out. And I can't believe how fear-driven lawyers are with this, that they'll often just, again, not reading the rules, be like, oh, I don't think I can do that.
Right.
And then they just take no action, and then they kill their business. And that's not helpful.
And reading the rules, I mean, go back and read them now, because I've seen states in the last 2 years change a lot of things that were legacy around for a while, like having the word where this is an advertisement on websites. Finally, like kind of like that's kind of pretty much gone away, but there's a few states left. But for the most
Right.
part, a lot of states that had that 4 or 5 years ago gotten rid of that, right? So there's some things that they've even changed. They've adopted, more states adopted model rules. I mean, they're still adopting them. It's not like it's all done. But
Well, and the ABA put out some proposed changes for the advertising rules, which have
Still.
not been implemented around
Correct.
the country yet, but I think probably will. They're
Mhm.
common sense. I mean, they were really just record keeping type, simple
Right.
things they were changing. So I do think eventually they will all adopt them. But yeah, like we don't have to keep copies of every time you change your website anymore.
Right.
There were things that were incredibly burdensome at one point. And so then I mean, some lawyers are like, oh, I just want to have a website. Well, that's a dumb, that's how people find you. So that fear stopping you from actually putting yourself out there in a helpful way is a big one that I think everybody should look at when they're thinking about advertising.
You touched on this for half a second, and so I want to dive into a little more is social media. Like that's probably some of the biggest questions I get when I go speak and talk on these topics, right? Is, well, social media, there's not enough room to say the disclaimers. There's not all these things, like everybody's, again, thinks they know what the rules are, and
Right.
Says, well, I just can't be on social media. Or I can't be personal on my business social media. I have to separate them and stuff. Any advice or things you've seen around social media and some ethics, or just, maybe general advice of it's okay?
Well, it is okay to be active on social media. One of the things that I think is the most freeing concept when it comes to social media is to recognize that effective use of social media for marketing purposes is not actually advertising on social media.
Mhm.
If you aren't advertising, if you're not saying, hey, I got a big verdict today, call me, to get yours, then you're not even subject to the rules,
Right.
the advertising rules, because you're not advertising. And people actually don't go on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or your biggest social media platform of the day to get an ad for a lawyer.
Correct.
But they do call people that they've gotten to know through social media. So if you just go out there and you're active and you're sociable and you're interacting with people, maybe you're putting out useful information about your practice area, which is not practicing law, which is not, giving legal advice to the general public. It's just like, hey, if your house flooded, here's the top 3 things you should do first. And, oh, by the way, I handle flood claims, right? Like that can be like at the bottom of your website, or, they can know that you are a lawyer who does this sort of work, but you're not pitching to them. You're giving helpful information. Those are how social media actually leads to business. It's not through screaming ads where you have to worry about a disclaimer and all of your, state's advertising rules. What are you complying with? All of the B's and C's of them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wish that the social networking term would have stuck around versus social media, because media implies like PR, like the newspapers, whatever. Like I'm trying to put a very specific message out there. Social networking is what we do all the time when we network, right? If you go to a meeting, you don't walk up to people and say, "Hey, did you see my new PDF? Download it now," and put it in front of their face.
And here's
right?
my business card.
Yeah, exactly. Like you just go and like what are you into these days? Like what's up? How's the game? Whatever. You network by being personable and getting to know each other, and that's how I like to think of social media. So I'm glad that, and I say that a lot too. It's like if you're just yourself out there, you're not subject to ethics rules. And everybody always still disagrees with me, but thank you for saying that, because here's an ethics lawyer who's saying it. But no, it's true. I mean, it's like just be yourself out there, be personable, and you're allowed to tell people that you're a real person and a lawyer.
Yes.
You're allowed to be both at the same time.
We don't have a lot of ethics opinions and specific rules guiding us for social media, which I think is where some of the fear comes from with using social media. But California issued an ethics opinion, gosh, I think it's now like 10 years old, which was already late to the game, because everybody was already super active, like on Facebook back then when this came out. And it's very clearly using Facebook as its example without naming Facebook. But the question that was posed in the ethics opinion was like, how do you comply with the attorney advertising rules when you're putting out these posts on social media? And it gave some sample posts and said, well, this one's not attorney advertising. This one is attorney advertising. And the difference was if you asked for future work, if you, how did they phrase it? Something like describe your availability for future work. So you could be like, came out of the courthouse with a big win. Yay. Not attorney advertising. Who's next?
Who's
now
next?
It's attorney
Call me now.
advertising.
Yeah, call me now.
You know?
Yep.
And so, and although that opinion is dated and, it's also one of the few that we have for guidance. What's useful about it is that it does sort of set that standard that we don't all, like, not every post that you put on social media is attorney advertising. Just because you're a lawyer and you're saying something doesn't mean you're advertising.
Right.
You're just out there talking, and that's okay. And it's even okay to talk about your work. So if people just did more of that, there would be less fear.
So we're running out of time, and I've got more questions. So do you mind sticking around? I want to ask a few more things.
Of course, I don't mind.
Awesome. Because I want to get to, like, you run an effective law firm, you're kind of virtual, and you've got a family stuff. I want to get into, like, how you're able to do all this and still have time for family, hobbies, and stuff. So I think that'd be fascinating. We like to talk about the business side of, like, law here a lot too. So people can learn a lot from, what I understand about, how you kind of run things there. So before we wrap up, though, I do want to make sure people on Facebook Live here know how to contact you.
So the best way to reach me is actually through my website, which is zaviehLaw.com. There's helpful information and a contact form and all of that. And my email is just Megan@ZaviehLaw.com. But I'm also really active on Twitter, where my handle is Zavieh Law. You can see a theme here. Everything's Zavieh Law. And my podcast is Lawyers Gone Ethical,
which is on all the podcasts.
It's on all the major platforms: iHeartRadio, Google, Stitcher, all of them.
So
yes.
Lawyers Gone Ethical.
Lawyers Gone Ethical.
Yeah. So make sure you guys check out Lawyers Gone Ethical. If you have any questions about ethics issues, and specifically in California for clients, but
yes.
You also have a product, if I understand too, right? You have ability to help more people with that.
Yeah, so I noticed that a lot of lawyers going through the discipline system represent themselves. And so I created the State Bar Playbook, which is just at statebarplaybook.com, which is basically a handbook for lawyers going through the California discipline system, self-represented.
Got it. So we got your website, we got Lawyers Gone Ethical podcast, and now the product. So Joe, make sure we have those links in there. Awesome. Thanks for joining us today. Be sure to like and subscribe to our page so you'll get notified when our next episode goes live. So we're going to keep going here in the GNGF studios, and be sure to check out the extended interview with Megan, which will drop on Friday, where we're going to dive into how she runs a successful law practice and has time for family and her hobbies. Okay, and we're back with Megan Zavieh. And Megan, thanks for sticking with us.
Happy to.
I wanted to kind of get into this a little bit more on, I kind of consider you have like a virtual law firm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you do live in one state and primarily practice in another.
I do.
And
I think it's the definition of a virtual law office,
right?
Except California's definition, you never meet a client. Like, they have this weird, very specific definition. So maybe I don't.
So by the law, you don't have a virtual law.
I guess not, but
it's virtual-ish.
I am very far away from my clients, and I rarely meet them. If I do my job right from the beginning, I should never have to meet them. And that's not because I don't want to, but that's just.
You do have to fly back occasionally. And
I do.
Represent.
Yeah, when I have a matter actually go to court, then I have to go.
Yeah. So you have to get back and forth between states sometimes. I follow you on social media, so I know you're, pretty hardcore athlete. You do all the what's the one races you were doing a lot.
I was doing a lot of Spartan races. Yeah, and distance runs.
Yeah. Yep. So you have a lot of time training, and for that hobby, you got kiddos.
Yeah, I
right?
do.
I mean,
I got 4 of those.
That takes a lot of time. And you actually, you spend time with your kids, you train on these things, you live in one state, you have to fly occasionally. What is it that's enabled you to kind of like have this ability to have a successful law practice and find time to do things that you want to do personally?
Well, I suppose there's a few answers to that. One of them is having a really supportive husband helps a lot. I don't know how I would make all that happen completely alone. In fact, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't happen in any kind of way I'd want to live with. I mean, I suppose there's paid help along the way. You could make it happen, but it wouldn't look like I want it to. Also, I have a lot of determination coming out of being incredibly miserable in law firm life. I know I'm pretty outspoken about that on social media. Sometimes it's long enough ago now that I feel pretty comfortable talking openly about it. The PTSD that comes from being in firms, kind of shuts you down for a few years when you're first out. But I've been out about, 12 years now. So I'm good with talking about it openly. And I mean, I just hated life when other people dictated what I did and when I did it. And my fondest law firm memories are usually surrounded with things I was doing against the grain. For example, I did take the MCAT and preparing to go to medical school. And for about 6 weeks before that, I went to yoga every day at lunch from my big firm. It was a part of my, I'm trying to get ready to do something that's super stressful for me, way more stressful than the bar exam because this was out of my element. And I actually stole away at lunch and I snuck out. It was literally sneaking out to go do something for yourself for an hour. And I hated that so much that when I was able to go solo and said, I'm going to design a life I actually want to live in, there were a lot of criteria for that. And among them was, first and foremost was getting to be with my kids, because that drove me out of law firm life in the end. That was really the nail in the coffin for me. And the workouts and races and all came later, but it fit right in. I'm going to do what I want to do to live a life I want. And not that I'll work in the remaining time, I'll just work in whatever's left over, but I'm going to design a schedule that works for me. And it doesn't always work for everybody else. It doesn't work for clients sometimes. I lose clients because of it. And I'm good with that. Okay, then we're not a good fit. If you have to talk to me in the hours of my day, which I devote to my kids, then go find somebody who's available in those hours. I'm just not.
That's
and
awesome.
So, maybe I could be making more money and helping more people and doing things in a more, a way that's more successful in terms of the practice. But I'm very happy with what I've built and being able to make it work with my family.
Well, and I'm big on, kind of wellness for the entrepreneur, right? I mean, if you're not happy and healthy, the law practice disappears over time. I mean, as you mentioned, a lot of people who get really stressed and deal with a lot of issues from the stress end up causing all the mistakes
Absolutely.
right? So being able to know, who you are, why you do what you do, what the bounds are. I mean, those are some of the foundational things that we ask, any prospective client that we're working with is you need to understand that before we build a marketing strategy. Because, if you just ask us to build a marketing strategy, we might build something, you might have this amazing firm that is exactly the one you don't want to work at.
Absolutely. And, and I'd love to say I started out having all of this figured out, but I didn't. I was I need to be home. That number one, I always knew. I wanted to be home. I left big law partnership track when my first child was 6 months old. And obviously there've been a lot of kids and a lot of moves and a lot of changes since then, but that was always at the heart of my decision was I need to be present with my children. That was number one. But beyond that, I mean, what I started building, it was ad hoc and it was take whatever work came at one point. And I'm admitted in 4 states. So, that's in that other state that I don't really know the system, but it's money and it would help pay the bills. I went through that too, just like everybody does at some point as you're growing. But the more intentional I got in designing it and choosing the work I did, the better and better the whole firm, grew and happier I was. So.
It is a very, I think, scary thing for people to kind of say, well, I'm going to target or niche down or whatever word people want to use, right? Which to a lot of people means, well, that's less possible clients. I'm already struggling getting, myself paid, my mortgage paid, my office, my staff. You want me to target less people?
Oh yeah, that's terrifying.
So I get it. And, but I love hearing that, the more and more you figured out exactly what you want for you and the best clients that you want to work with, and those things fitting together has actually led to your firm running better, growing better?
Absolutely. And if you think about it, it does make sense, but it's very hard to implement for you. Like someone else can explain it,
Hmm.
and say, okay, I've been harmed, I'm 45 years old, harmed by a hysterectomy gone bad, by a male doctor. Like you've got all these specifics. And I need a lawyer. And you go out there and there's 50 personal injury lawyers. And they all claim to do everything, right? But you
Hmm.
find that one, the woman who represents 40-something-year-old women with hysterectomies, like, and they're all specific. Oh, that's the one you're going to call,
Hmm.
right? And if you think of it from the client's perspective, of course you'd go to that person. And as long as there's, say, 1,000 potential clients who have that kind of harm, who could be funneled to you or whatever your number is, right? There's enough business to sustain you. Well, why wouldn't you just become an expert in that narrow specialty? Right. And it's easier to see when you're talking about someone else or talking about it from the client side when it's you and you're like, so now every time you get a car accident case, you're going to tell them no. Oh, why would I
What?
tell them
Yeah.
no? I need the work. But it
Yeah.
actually works way better.
Yeah, it does. And we've client after client that succeed once they do that. But I mean, I understand the fear, right? I mean, I'm
Oh,
technically
me
an
too.
entrepreneur as well. I'm an entrepreneur. Like I started saying, we'll do marketing for anybody. And we realized that, you know what? We love this space. We love working with law firms and stuff. And let's go all in. And it was a debate and scary. But here we are 10 years later and loving it. So you're also very client centric because you mentioned this,
Mhm.
like the right clients, the right fit,
Yes.
and you're virtual. You said like, you may never actually meet face to face in person. Um, how do you make the experience of working with, your clients easier?
Well, I really try and lower the friction for them. And I think about that kind of at each step. And I have a wonderful assistant who pushes back and thinks about these things too. So I look at it as, how do you make it as easy as possible to get information about me, to set up a consultation with me, to get me the things I need, to make things like scheduling a phone call super simple. And we just try and lower friction everywhere. So like we offer, we have tons of information on our website, tons. You can book consultations there. So you don't have to wait for a phone call back or a back and forth email about what time it's all done there. Intake forms are automatically generated. They can fill those out on their own time. Give me anything they want me to look at before we talk, and I will read all of it so that they're not, having to tell this whole story from scratch, which I could have read all of their documents ahead of time. So we just look at that at each step of the way. How do we make it easier and less stressful for them? I found at the beginning of my practice, so we're talking several years ago now, a lot more people would be like, you mean I can't come sit down and talk to you across the desk? Right. And like they wanted that. They don't want it so much
Mm-mm.
anymore because people are so busy. They actually kind of appreciate that that's not the expectation. And there was recently some Twitter posts about law firms who still require an in-person meeting to be
Mm-hmm.
retained. I think you know about those. And I was like, oh my gosh, why? Why would you do that to your client? Right? Like that's just not even cool to make them go through that. And I find that they don't really want that. And if I run into
Right.
somebody who does, then I actually consider this, for me, it's part of giving the client the best possible experience. I tell them to find someone else.
Right.
When there's a need that I can see they have that I not can't meet, but really don't want to meet because it doesn't suit my business model and what works for me, then I'm very willing to tell someone, go find someone else. And I don't just send them off. I have people I send them to, but that to me is part of the client experience of acknowledging when somebody's not a good fit.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, that comes to that integration you just talked about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
knowing your client and, being able to, like, I think it's great to be able to say the best thing for you is not to work in the way that I work because that's not
Mm-hmm.
what you need.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I still
So,
remember the first time I ever had to do that. Actually, it was in the time before I had such a clear focus of what I wanted out of my practice. And someone called me, and it was in a time when I would bend over backwards for people,
mhm.
make everybody fit, right? I'd fit them, whatever they needed. And it was a woman who had just given birth. And God, I feel for this woman. I and I want to say she had twins. I'm not totally sure about that, but I know she had just given birth, and she got a bar investigation letter. It was like days. And I mean, I remember sobbing on the phone to my brother a couple days after my first was born, and he didn't have kids yet. And he was like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "I don't know." And I'm just hormonal and I'm crying. And this poor woman called me, and she was in that stage. Okay. And she was just, I mean, poor thing, dealing with a bar investigation on top of it. And she was like, "I need to come and see you. I need to sit in a room with you and go through this." And it was like, I could not do that. I was 3,000 miles away. There was no way I could hop on a plane. Like, it just couldn't happen. And that was the first time I had to turn somebody away because I couldn't meet their needs, but it was so clear I couldn't meet them that it was very easy to do.
Right.
And then it was a lesson that I've carried with me.
So it's just get down to like more like tactical things, because people
Sure.
love understanding. Everybody always asks, right? Like, so you mentioned like calendaring and other stuff. Like, so what tools are you using to make this process? And I love the word friction, by the way, because interesting about friction is like, reducing friction is great, but at the same time, you also can increase friction to, make sure you're getting the right clients, right? So for you, you've increased friction by saying, I'm not going to meet with you. So
Right.
like for some people, that's increasing friction, right? They want to meet with you. And you're like, no, go away.
For the wrong fit, it increases friction.
Yeah.
For the right fit, it decreases it.
Yeah, it's great. So I love that word. So what kind of tools are you using to help? You mentioned calendaring. You mentioned getting forms and intake.
So we've built a system with a few tools that integrate with each other. So we have a WordPress site that has an Acuity scheduler embedded. I love Acuity. It also allows for payment. So I do paid consultations. So it integrates with Stripe for payment. And then it's email confirmations. We have Jotform links in there. Those are our intake forms. And Jotform is fantastic, and it integrates with Dropbox. So when I do nothing, I've never heard of you, I've never talked to you, you can go on the website, book through Acuity, pay through Stripe, you get the Jotform form, and the next thing I know, my Dropbox syncs and pops up that I've got all of your documents and we have an appointment. So that's my intake process.
Which let's pause for a second. For a lot of law firms, that's a phone call that came in to email back and forth to schedule. Maybe your assistant helped with that. Maybe you're, holding onto your calendar, right? So you went back and forth for 10, 15 minutes of time. Then you had to get on the phone and you listen to everything. And then you ask for these documents, right? Say, well, here's all the stuff I need. And then you get the documents, you read them, and then you had to get on the phone again, because obviously not everything in the first call was handled in the documents, right? So all that time, you put a couple tools in place, and you talk about, getting some of that time back for spending time with family or the hobbies you want to do. Like there's like an hour, almost every hour or two, every client you've gained back.
Yep. And I spend time, looking at things ahead of our call, but I just look like, oh, what do I have on the calendar today? And then I look and, oh, yep, they filled out the form, and I read through their documents, and then we hop on the phone. I'm like, okay, yeah, I read the letter and I've read that. Okay, tell me the real story. And they can just dive into the real story instead of, well, the bar says this and the client said that. Well, no, I got all that already. You tell me your side, and we actually can have a super productive conversation, which I love. And then beyond that, I deal mostly through email with my clients. As much as I would love to migrate away from email, and I do migrate away from it. Like I use Slack with my team, and we hardly ever have to email anything. Clients are still pretty email based. So that's most of it. But again, rarely a call, because they're as busy as I am and don't really like the phone much more than I do. Although I do have the ones who like to call me on their way back to the office from court, my court heavy clients like that. But we use Acuity for ongoing calls too. So, it's hard to pin people down like, oh yeah, I'll call you after court today. That might be 11:30. It might be 1. Okay, I can do 11:30 and can't do 1. And then we play phone tag. So we have scheduling links for just ongoing calls as well. And then Clio's the backbone of the administrative side of the firm for billing and timekeeping, which we don't bill hourly, but we keep time.
Yeah, well, that's important. I mean, even people that don't bill hourly, I'm keeping time and keeping track of that. So Clio is your like kind of practice management software, and then you hook in a lot of other things. But you Stripe for billing. You don't use Clio for billing, or kind of
no,
both.
so
Like,
I use
Stripe's for the upfront. Clio's
Yeah,
for?
so for consultations, we use Stripe because LawPay doesn't integrate with Acuity, and because of the nature of the charge for the initial consultation, I'm comfortable with that. But for our all of our other flat fees, all our Matter billing
Yep,
goes through
all through
Clio.
Clio. Great.
Mhm.
Well, awesome. So thank you very much for walking through
Absolutely.
all of that. I think that I just love for people to be able to every once in a while get to hear like a virtual law firm that's doing well, but niched and focused and using tools to be more efficient and enjoying life the way you want to enjoy it. Obviously, we all have there's a week here and there where it's going to be a little rougher, but
Sure.
all in all, being able to focus on you and your wellness is great. So
Well,
thank you
hopefully
for
it'll help me live longer.
right.
So-
Well, thank you for joining me again, Megan. I really appreciate it.
well, thanks for having me, Mark. Glad to be here.
All right. Well, that's our interview with Megan Zavieh. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to like and subscribe to this video on Facebook, YouTube, and all the other great places you can find us. And we'll see you next time.
Hey, what's up? I'm Josh. Thanks so much for joining us. If you feel like you learned something today, think of how beneficial it would be to chat with myself or another one of our marketing consultants one-on-one. Go ahead and visit our website to schedule your free consultation. It only takes a minute.